Yesterday I watched it on YouTube. Now I know it's a fact.
G'day everyone, I'm the Anti-Theocrat, and I thought we should get this topic out of the way very quickly before she outages her usefulness. What are we looking at? We're looking at the Conversations article on Greta Thunberg. Misogyny, male rage, and the words men use to describe Greta Thunberg. Because apparently the only issue we have with this spoilt brat is that we hate women. Greta Thunberg obviously scares some men silly. I'm wondering if she comes in for and aims for the balls. I don't know what other fear I could have of a 16-year-old brat. They certainly never scared me when I was 16. The bullying of the teenager by conservative, middle-aged men has taken on a grim, almost hysterical edge. For the record, I'm not conservative, and most of the people I've been talking about this issue with are female. They're not male. They're not misogynists. And though most of us tend to be middle-aged in my circle or slightly younger, I'm not talking to that many conservatives. I do have conservatives in my circles because being a centrist, we can do that. But I have people who are socially left-wing. And God. Anyway, we'll get off that one because that's a ridiculous claim that it's just men having a problem with this child. And some of them are reaching deep into their misogynist's playbook to divert focus from her message. I'm sorry, I listened to her message. It was rhetoric, climate justice, rhetoric. There was no proposed cures, solutions. It was just abuse, spiel, all the usual crap. And tucked neatly into the middle of it all was climate justice. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, climate justice is the feminist proposal that women and minorities will suffer more from climate change than men will, particularly white men. And the only solution to this issue, which is the great driving issue of today's climate change activists, is socialism. We have to become socialist so that these people can tell us how to be better for the environment. But Greta never actually tells us how to be better for the environment. Her example of how to be better for the environment was to sail a $5 million yacht across the world. And what do we get from that? The Sun reports choppy waters. Greta Thunberg's zero-carbon yacht trip won't save any emissions, as a crew have to fly to New York to sail it back. Like other green activists, you know, these ones, for instance. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry faced new green row over Range Rover shipped from UK to Southern Africa for their 10-day tour. It's like the private jet they took to the private island to discuss climate change with some, I don't know, wealthy, self-serving gits. So, you know, Greta's way up there with them, flying crews around the world to sail her yacht for her. Where were we up to? Oh, yes. It's not a rhetorical accident that critics of Thunberg, nearly 17, which means she's 16, please. She is 16, and she started all this action before she was 16. So nearly 17 is not really the issue, is it? And it's why I say she'll outage her usefulness, because when she hits 17, 18, they're going to be looking for a new little girl to use. Almost always call her a child, because she is. This infantilization, I'm not going to read it their way, is invariably accompanied by accusations of emotionality, hysteria, mental disturbance, and an inability to think for herself. I'll address the first part of this. Accusation of emotionality, hysteria, and mental disturbance. These are on record as her behaviours. This is why I say she's a spoilt brat. She has the most easy to get mental illness diagnosis in this day and age. It's like trying to get ADHD, diagnosis 10 years ago. It's just spoilt brat syndrome. It's bad parenting. Her parents became, I thought it was vegan, but hang on, wrong page, sorry about that. Her biography on Star Informer says she's a vegetarian, but her parents changed their dietary habits because of her. Her mother quit her job because of her. So this spoilt brat essentially gets everything she wants, and when she doesn't, she goes silent, throws tantrums, and then she gets diagnosed as having problems. She's got no problems. She's so spoilt, she doesn't think she answers to anyone for anything. Therefore, she can get away with any behaviour she likes, and rather than deal with the behaviour with a good spanking, she gets a medical diagnosis for it. Anyway, the inability to think for herself, well, that one's portrayed nicely up here. What do we got? This is Greta Thunberg off the script.
Could you please tell us what kind of message, what you are doing here today, what kind of message would you send by doing this to world leaders? And also can I ask you, do you think it's about time that President Trump would respond to what you have said today?
I think... I'm sorry, what was the first question?
What's the message you would like to send to our leaders by doing what you are doing?
I think what we want to send is... The message we want to send is to say that we have had enough. And anyone else wants to answer that question? I can't speak on behalf of everyone.
Okay, nobody was asking anyone else on the panel. She was asked personally what she thought the message she wanted to get across was, and she couldn't answer that simple question. This is about what she personally believes the message to be, and she can't answer because she doesn't have a script in front of her to tell her what she thinks the message is. So I got no problem with people thinking she's got an inability to think for herself. Her history, again, we can go to Star Informer, which says lists her controversies. That says she's been the tool of groups. The We Don't Have Time Foundation recruited her and as an unpaid youth and used her face and image to promote themselves without her permission. She's been a tool of other people for a long time, so none of this should come as a surprise to anyone. The idea that these people, the conversation, can't do that basic bit of research strikes me as a problem for them, not one for me. Anyway, stereotypical feminine labels, which are traditionally used to silence women in public speech, used to silence women's public speech and undermine their authority. No. People are questioning a child being used by activists to promote what they see as a problematic argument. And I mean, I was an activist for climate back in the day when it mattered to get people to recognise the science around. I'm less worried about global change because I don't see us having a cure on a global scale for change. While you all want your iPhones and you want to stand in the line to get that iPhone at its premium price on the first day, and it's not just you, the Chinese do it, everyone does it. While you want that thing, you're going to be driving a demand for people to manufacture it somewhere. If we stop producing coal here in Australia, the Chinese have reserves of brown coal, which is dirtier, causes more CO2. In a way, we're doing the world a favour by selling them our black coal while there's no other solution. Because it's cleaner. It burns cleaner. Which would we rather? There's got to be some balance put in this argument, and there is none. So I stopped being an activist. And since I stopped being an activist, I've seen arguments like climate equity and climate justice, which are essentially, we need socialism so everyone gets the same money and everyone's working to the same goal under our socialist dictatorship. I'm sorry. I've lived in China for short periods. I married a Chinese national. I have Chinese family. I've been to China. They're not decreasing or even stabilising their CO2 output. As more and more wealth is distributed into the Chinese population, their CO2 outputs are only increasing, and they will reach our levels one day. Maybe more, because there will always be poor Chinese in a population that big, and they are going to do the dirtiest things to make their lives more comfortable. Because those of us who live on budgets and don't have $5 million yachts, or parents with millions of dollars, we can't afford solar panels, wind generators, which might give us power part of our day. None of that's a cure for us. Paying our bills is hard enough. But the idea that we can extend ourselves to that extra little bit just so that you can have your little argument that we should need socialism gets stuffed. Anyway, I don't have much else to say about that article. It just rambles a load of shit, telling white men that they're wrong because she's a girl and we should accept her word for everything. Well, fuck that too, because girls are brainless morons. I don't believe women mature till at least the age of 35, possibly all their lives. There are women I know who never mature. I think men mature earlier, and though we see their maturity differently to the way we see women, we see women as more settled, and we see men, boys, as more active, and they'll drink more, and they're just not quiet. But women are seething bitches, some until their mid-30s, some all their lives. And that is not adult behaviour. Adult behaviour is taking responsibility. And men are forced to take responsibility, legally forced, if not socially, to take responsibility for themselves and their lives and those around them. And women are never given that idea that they have a responsibility. A few. This is one of the areas that I actually like conservatives, that there are still people raising children with the idea that they hold some responsibility for their own lives and their own actions. But a hell of a lot of them don't. And I don't think this is a new thing. I think this is as old as humanity. Because we care when a girl cries. We pamper a girl when she cries. When a boy cries, we tell him to man up, be strong. And it teaches different ways of viewing the world. I'm going to move on because Greta shits me and I want to get this finished. We've done that one. Let's get rid of that window. Okay, before Greta Thunberg's famous school strike, her mum was the only celebrity in the family. Mamamia.com.au obviously can't research because I found this one, and we're going back to Star Informer. And Star Informer says, hang on, we'll keep going. It says she's straight. Well, there's an exciting thing for you. like anyone wants to, yeah. We'll get onto that topic too. Okay, her father is a Swedish actor, producer, and author. Her mother is a Swedish opera singer, and her grandfather was a Swedish actor and director. That's 3 family members who were celebrities before she was. How the fuck do these people do their research? Righto, we're going to move on. She doesn't... This is the topic I was going to get back to. She doesn't flirt or giggle or pout. What's behind men's discomfort at Greta Thunberg? Well, our discomfort at Greta Thunberg is that she's a young girl being used by other people to promote the message that we somehow are to blame for everything that she has as a child of a millionaire family, and that somehow that is white men's fault and only socialism can cure it. That's our problem. It's not with this girl. It is with the girl being used by other people. Personally, the girl's an idiot, a spoilt brat, but she's just the result of somebody else's activism. But let's get back to the title. She doesn't flirt, giggle, or pout. Have you looked at this child? She's ordinary, she's obnoxious, she's a spoilt brat. She's too wealthy to believe that she's, one of the plebs. She's special. Nobody wants to date this girl. Probably nobody has ever looked at her like she was dateable. She doesn't flirt, giggle, or pout because nobody has brought that out in her. She doesn't see herself as a girl. She sees herself as an activist. Because the boys around her think she's an untouchable. I don't know that that's a good thing. I mean, nobody's particularly interested in flirty, giggly, pouty girls. But this isn't a measure of her worth. This is a measure of the fact that to her peers, she doesn't have a worth. Why are you making that an issue? So what's behind our discomfort? We did that. I'm not going to go into this story because it's the same shit that just blames white men for all the hate. And look at the example of the hate they've given us. It's pan in on this one. I can't tell if Greta needs a spanking or a psychological intervention. Now, how hateful is that? I think she needs a spanking. And that's not because I hate her. That's because I don't like spoilt children. Mine are not allowed to throw tantrums. Why would I accept it from someone else's? Right, I think we've just about done with Greta. We are... what are we... Greta Thunberg is not an ordinary 16-year-old and scares her bullies senseless. It's the same stuff, isn't it? They don't actually have anything to say about the arguments that are being made against her. I admit, I'm quite happy to say this is a spoilt child and it needs a spanking. It needs a bloody good hiding. But that's not the heart of my argument, is it? I've already mentioned that I'm against the ideas of, what are they? Environmental equity and environmental justice. I'm totally against those things. They're social justice Marxist ideas. They're driving the idea that the only cure for global change, for global climate action, is socialism. And socialism has never solved anything. I was having this argument with my Chinese wife the other day, that China is now a country with a lot of wealth, and it is being pushed into the countryside more and more. And that wealth is meaning that there are mansions being built in styles that I've never been able to live in. All over China. Every little village has mansions in it. And these mansions are a product of China's failure as socialism, because it's the new economic experiment and the opening up of China to the West that caused this wealth. 10 years ago, when I first went to China, 10-ish years ago, it was not as rich as it is now. And 10 years before that, it was socialist. And there was no wealth. The farmers were still being tithed out of their crops for the state. Now they get paid for it. But that, again, is a result of socialism's failures. You can't look at places like China and say, it succeeded. It just hasn't. Anyway, stupid child. I thought I'd chuck this one on the end of this one because here we are with climate change at the door, and it just doesn't seem to be coming, because I remember 20 years ago they were saying we had, 3 years to act or we'd hit the point of no return for climate change. And I was reading the science and so forth at that time. I was never really big on the predictions, and I'm glad I wasn't, because I might have been led up the same garden path as a lot of other people. I know that some of the predictions we've seen in part, but nothing to the scale that it was predicted 20 years ago. So, why should we be worried about climate change when scientists discover Andromeda Galaxy? Oh, it's got a history of mass eating. So, will it eat the Milky Way? So, we are in danger because, yes, apparently in 4.5 billion years, it's going to collide with our Milky Way galaxy and swallow it up, because it is huge by comparison. So, there you go. You've only got 4.5 billion years regardless, and I think it's slightly more than that before we crash into the sun. It's slightly less than that before the atmosphere burns off anyway. If you want to cure humanity's need to exist in this environment, you want to get humanity off this planet. Seriously, it's in danger. Okay, yeah, I'm being a bit hyperbolic. Anyway, that's it for this video. I'm going to call it a take. I've had enough of trying to record this video. I've got 4-year-olds running around the house half the day. I am the anti-theocrat. May your gods remain fictional, and I'll see you in the next one.